What's up, guys? Young Bucks, Old Goats. I'm the GOAT, and tonight I'm going to give you my reaction to the 30 for 30 that just aired tonight on ESPN, which was Long Gone Summer, which was the 1998 baseball season when both Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa were chasing the home run record of Roger Maris. And that came on the heels of the baseball strike a few years earlier, which was 1994. We had lost the World Series that year for the baseball strike. Owners and players couldn't get together. Something similar is kind of happening right now under different circumstances. Hope they work that out so we can get some baseball this year. Anyways, back to the point at hand. So baseball lost a lot of fans during that time because people got pissed off, that these millionaires can't come together, and we lost the World Series for the first time in over 100 years. So 1998, Sammy Sosa and McGwire, as you know, go on this historic home run chase for Roger Maris, and it kind of really helped baseball get back on the map, and people were reading newspapers every day, checking box scores. Did he hit one? Did Sammy hit one? Is McGwire coming to town? Is Sammy coming to town? So it really kind of helped bring baseball back. Obviously, years later, we find out, there was some nefarious shit going on in the background, but still, it did help bring baseball back, and it was fun. Later, it didn't feel so good, kind of like, when you get your beer goggles on at the bar and it was fun, and then, when you see the girl the next day, it doesn't feel so good. Something like that probably is what happened. Now, my first reactions. One, I had just seen all the Last Dance docs, which was obviously that was way longer. This was a 2-hour, and the last doc, was it 8 episodes or 10? I think it was 8 or 10 episodes, about an hour each. So the one thing though that jumped out at me was this feels so much more recent for whatever reason in my head than the last Michael Jordan Bulls championship. That feels longer ago, but those were both in 1998, the last Bulls championship, and the premise or the premise of this 30 for 30, same year, 1998. The second thing that jumped out at me was how little they really talked about the PEDs. I'm guessing, I was surprised that they actually were interviewing Sammy and Mark McGwire. At first, I didn't read too much about what it was going to be like, but I wasn't expecting them to be interviewing them. I thought it was just going to be like a documentary without them. So that was cool that they interviewed them, but they talked to them very little about the PED use, which is kind of like the main thing of that whole summer for me, So I enjoyed it. I'm a baseball fan, but a little underwhelmed, the Last Dance felt so much better for whatever reason. I wish they would have gotten more into the PED use, but then again, probably they wouldn't have been able to get those guys to do that interview if they were just going to be grilling them all the time. So maybe they had to play nice. Going back to, if you look at these guys and the other guys, how did we not realize what was going on? Those dudes look like cartoon characters, man. They look like bodybuilders. They didn't look like baseball players. I mean, the only athlete they resemble was maybe like a WWE superstar or some type of power lifter. It was just crazy. And nobody really questioned it. Of course, the owners, they loved it. More people coming through the gate, more eyes on the TV screens. So I guess nobody cared. Everybody just wanted to go ahead and feel good and have, something fun to think about. A couple other things I remember where I watch it, man, I miss Harry Carey. Harry Carey was fun. I'm just wearing the jersey in tribute of the show. I'm not really a Cubs fan, but when I was a kid, one of the few things we would watch on baseball before the Marlins was they would give us the Yankees on Friday night, and then sometimes Sundays you would get WGN that would play the Cubs. And, Harry Carey was awesome, and that whole atmosphere was awesome. Actually, these two franchises have a great rivalry and probably some of the better fan bases. I mean, the Cubs were terrible for a long time, and that stadium was always packed, and they always loved their Cubbies and Harry Carey, and take me out to the ball game and all that. And we can't say the same down here, but loyal fans, great rivalry. St. Louis has great fans too. Kerry Wood, what hype? Big time hype around Kerry Wood. Well, since I mentioned Harry Carey, Jack Buck, Joe Buck's dad, great announcer too for the Cardinals. So all around, they had great announcers. There's some other things that popped out to me. I had forgot Sammy Sosa hit 20 home runs in the month of June. Man, they should have known something was up. 20 home runs in 1 month. That's a pretty solid season for some guys. And I had forgot Ken Griffey Jr. was in the mix earlier in the season with this. It was first Griffey and McGwire who were kind of like on pace to challenge the record. And then obviously after that June that Sammy had, it was after at a certain point it was basically just Sammy and McGwire. And it is kind of sad that Sammy hasn't had much involvement with the Cubs, like they mentioned on the show. I think for like a decade he hasn't really been to the stadium or done anything. And they always bring guys back, bobblehead night or old timers game or something like that. But I think his problem is, or their problem with him, they kind of alluded to it, was they'd want him to like kind of admit what happened, and then, all right, you admit, we forgive. That's kind of like how things work, right? You fuck up, you say sorry, the other person forgives you, you move on. That's, the way you want it to work. But I don't think he's ever really full-blown come out and said, I fucked up, I shouldn't have done that. And I'm going to go over some numbers at the end because I think some of these guys, they would have been great without it. Maybe not Sammy. I'm not so sure about Sammy. But anyways, his appearance, it wasn't that shocking to me because I already knew about it. But, yeah, I can see where some people would be kind of shocked if they haven't seen Sammy lately. His skin is, like, way lighter than it was before. And I seen him get touchy about that on interviews, so that's probably why nobody mentioned that, which is fine, whatever. It's just, if you haven't seen him in a while, it could be a little bit shocking. Going back to like that era, I remember that was the newspaper era, which we don't have anymore really. I mean, there's still newspapers, but can you get a newspaper at the supermarket? Radio was still kind of big at that time. And I know it's not as good or as efficient as what we have today, but I miss it because maybe I'm romanticizing it, but I kind of liked, all right, you got to listen to this on the radio if you want it. You got to pick up the newspaper the next day, stuff like that. Another thing that I remember, and it kind of stuck out to me now, is that even though we had, in the background, the whole andro and PD steroid use thing, the two guys were super gracious, McGwire and Sosa. There was no animosity between them. There was great sportsmen. There was great sportsmanship between them, and they were super likable. That was another thing that made it fun. You liked. They both seemed like good guys. And Sammy for a while was Chicago. He was the Cubs for baseball, obviously. Jordan retired, and then he was there for a few more years. I'm gonna go over the numbers later on some of these guys at the end. By the way, this was for the single season home run record. Obviously, they were breaking Roger Maris's record. Watch, if you're into baseball, 61. I think the title of the movie is 61 with an asterisk. Billy Crystal did that movie. It's about the season when Roger Maris breaks Babe Ruth's record as a Yankee. Pretty good movie, which leads me to the next thing is, after all the stuff came out later about McGwire, which he finally did admit to using. He did say it was only to recover. But, you know, if you look at him, man, he had to be doing a lot of weights to change his physique from his rookie year to what he looked like later. I mean, he was just a monster. But it must have felt bad, maybe for both, for the Maris family and for him when he invited them over, when he was about to break the record, and then he jumps in the stands and he hugs them. I probably wouldn't have done that. Maybe he feels like he shouldn't have done that now that all that's come out. You know, he brought the family to break their father's record, and, you know, he did it in this fashion. It was fun. It was fun to watch that all. Just some of the records, it gets dicey because then, you know, they're kind of tainted. Roger Maris's record's been broken. Let me look at it real quick here. Oops, sorry about that. If I broke your eardrums. It's been broken multiple times since then, which it stood for from 1961 to 98. So he broke Babe Ruth's record from 1927. So that's 34 years. So he broke Ruth's record 34 years later. His record gets broken 37 years later, but it was broken that same season twice because not only did McGwire hit 70, Sosa hit 66. The following year, 99, McGwire hit 65, again breaking the record. Sosa hit 63, again breaking the record. 2000, I guess everybody took a break. 2001, Sammy hit 64, again. So Sammy Sosa broke Roger Maris's record 3 times, more than anybody else. Then, of course, you had Barry Bonds comes in with the 73, who's the current holder. Who is another story. He's a product kind of this long gone summer, the summer of 1998. He's out. It's funny that they show him in the outfield a few times when, you know, Sammy or McGwire hits a home run, and he's kind of looking, and you could tell he's pissed because the attention's not on him. The monster that Barry Bonds became later was created during that season because he wanted to get all the attention. He wanted to be the man. He was a great player. He was a multi-time MVP. He would have been, there's no doubt in my mind, Barry Bonds is a Hall of Fame player without steroids because he didn't use, or at least didn't use hardcore until later in his career. The guy was a wiry leadoff hitter, hit 300, stole bases, great eye, always had a great eye. Steroids are not going to give you, no kind of PED is going to give you a good batting eye. McGwire was not a great hitter. He was a great home run hitter, but he was not a great hitter for average. I'm going to look at the numbers. I don't think Sammy was such a great hitter for average either, but Barry was. If you didn't put it in the spot where Barry wanted it, you know, he just stood up there with that bat, and he'd take his, well, it would be this way. Actually, he was a lefty. He'd take his walk, you know. He had ridiculous amount of walks. So that was kind of funny where they show Barry in the outfield when they'd have few runs. On a personal note, I remember going to the Marlins Stadium. They showed it in the Joe Robbie Stadium. I remember being there when the Cardinals came to town that season, and I don't remember. I think he hit 2 home runs. He was either 56 and 57 or 58 and 59, and it was fun to be at the stadium, even though, you know, Florida teams always end up like on the wrong side of history. But yeah, it was fun being there. I don't remember that whole Sosa being there in Congress with the Clintons for some foundation. That was odd. I don't remember that at all. So that's basically some of my thoughts on it. I do want to review I do want to review some of the stats before we go. And I got to mention the 2005 when they testified. They kind of touched on it a little bit. And, you know, one thing about Jose Canseco is, yeah, the guy's a rat. But I don't think, so far, it has really not been proven that he was a liar about the people that he implicated in his books or in the main book, Juiced. Because it was Palmeiro who, you know, you remember him. I did not take steroids, and he points at them, and then later, you know, he gets a test, and then we never hear from him again. I am going to cover him in my Cuban baseball stories, where I do a bio on one Cuban baseball player eventually, and I'll get into that more, but damn, that guy disappeared off the face of the planet. And I think, who's standing better, McGwire or him? Because McGwire was at the same hearing, and he kind of did the lame, I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm not here to talk about the past. And Sammy Sosa all of a sudden didn't speak English anymore, which was hilarious because we had all heard him do, press conferences before and stuff like that. So it was just kind of lame. But Giambi was another one that McGwire, that Canseco implicated. Those guys all later admitted, Giambi admitted almost immediately, I made a mistake. This is wrong. I'm going to make it up. And that's it. Nobody ever bothered him again. Nobody ever really brought it up that much again. He came back, he played, and actually, he's probably pretty well liked among Yankee fans. And that's it. The first thing they got to do is say, you know what, I messed up. And most people, when you say you did that, they'll leave you alone. Now, you get to like an A-Rod situation. He denied it and wanted to fight and do this and that and the other. They won't leave you alone. Or you do like a Roger Clemens where you just deny it and the evidence is mounting. The press and the fans are not going to leave you alone. So the best bet, and I'm glad McGwire did it eventually because he's now involved in baseball, is to just admit it and then move on. We're getting some kind of guys that have some question marks. Because Ivan Rodriguez, Pudge, he just got in, but he was one guy that Canseco said did it. So we're getting some guys in that are kind of questionable now, but I don't think we're ever going to see the hardcore guys get into the Hall of Fame. I don't think we're going to see a Bonds, a McGwire, or a Sosa get into the Hall because it's just it was too overwhelming, the evidence. At one point, I don't know who talked there about like, oh, but there was never really a test. Actually, Sammy had a test when they did that, those ones that were supposed to be anonymous. So, which A-Rod came out on that one. I think Ortiz came out on that one. He's another guy that might get into the Hall of Fame and came out in one of those. So, and we don't need a test on McGwire. He admitted as such. So there's no doubt, there is absolutely no doubt that these guys, were taking steroids. And it's a shame that some of these guys are tarnished because of that. Because let's look at the numbers. McGwire came in blazing. 49 home runs his rookie year. He was a big guy, but he didn't look anything like what he looked like now. That was his age 23 season. Then 32 home runs, 33 home runs, 39, 22. You could look this up on Baseball Reference, 42. Then he had some injury issues in 93, 94, but he bounced back in 95 with 39, then 52. That was his Oakland A. And then he had 58 total in 97 when they traded him. He was part of those great 1989, 88, 90 Oakland A's teams. But, he's a 263 career hitter, so not the best batting average. I think McGwire would have hit a ton of home runs anyways. So I don't think this guy needed the steroids to be great. Maybe it would have been harder. Maybe he would have had more injuries, harder time recovering, but he was still a good home run hitter. Now, let's look at Sammy. Sammy, I told you age 23 season, McGwire hit the 49 homers. Age 23 season for Sammy, he hits 8 home runs. And he had been playing since age 20. He had 4 home runs, 1, 3, 15, 10, 8. So he's got like he's like 4 or 5 seasons in, and he's not doing anything like what he did later. After his 1, 2, 3, 4, like his 6th season, he finally hits 33 home runs. Then 25, 36, Finally gets a 40 as a Cub, 36, and then you get into the ridiculous point of his career where he's hitting 66, 63, 50, 64, 49, 40, 35, and 14 finally at 2005. Let's look at one more guy. Barry Bonds. 14-time All-Star, 7-time MVP. That's unheard of, man. Pittsburgh Pirates days, he's hitting about 20 home runs. He's hitting about 30 bases. And he's hitting around 300. Career 298 hitter. But all of a sudden, instead of hitting those 20 to 25, he starts hitting, let's see, 46, 37, 33, 42, 40. In the 1998 Long Gone Summer season, 37. A paltry 37. Nobody cares. There was like shortstops and second basemen hitting 37. 99, 34. 2000, he starts juicing a little harder. 49. Then he just explodes with 73. What's odd is he never got after higher than 50 other than that one season. It was 49, 73, 46, 45, 45. 5 in an injury-plagued season, then 26, 28 at the age of 42, 28. And he would have kept playing as a DH or something else. So, you know, it's really sad that some of these guys are tarnished by all this. They brought it upon themselves. I'm not going to feel sorry for them, but for the game, you know, it's bad because some of these guys could have been great without it. Sammy, I'm not so sure. But, you know, there's a price to pay when you're doing this kind of thing. You know, you're going to get the immediate benefits of it all. And then in the end, you know, somebody like Sammy pays the price. He hasn't really been involved in baseball or anything. McGwire's been in there. I'm not sure. Is he still hitting coach somewhere? I know he was in L.A. and then San Diego for a while. But, you know, he's gotten back in, definitely. So, all right, guys. I don't know. What did you think when you saw, or did you see, the Long Gone Summer? How do you feel about these guys that are kind of tainted or implicated with the steroids, PED use? It was kind of disappointing when I found out about a lot of it. Over time, you know, you find out that like almost, I don't want to say almost everybody, but like a big majority of the people were doing it anyways. So the guy I think about, and I don't like him that much or that team, obviously, Pedro and the Red Sox, but how great was that guy in the midst of all this bulked up dudes and maybe like a liver ball, and you know how dominant he was. So that's amazing. I'm going to give you guys a trivia question that I will leave the answer in the description. The all-time home run king and the single season home run king is Barry Bonds. Everybody knows that. We also know that before him, Barry Bonds broke Hank Aaron's record. And most people also know that Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's record. Talking all-time career home runs, not single season. Even though, you know, Ruth also had the single season. Hank Aaron never had that, but he was steady, always hitting home runs from the time he was a young rookie to from when he was a young buck till he was an old goat. He was hitting home runs all the time. But what most people don't know is who Babe Ruth broke the all-time home record from. Hard one, I know. Think about it. Check my description of this video. It'll give you the answer. Pretty interesting. His record, I believe, stood for 23 years before Babe Ruth broke it. And I think that's all I got. Check out the sponsor of the show, guys, manofactionfigures.com. You might be able to get some action figures, bobbleheads like the ones you see up there, or any other collectibles you may be into, or anything else. Father's Day is coming up. The store's open Tuesday through Saturday. Tuesday through Friday, we're open 1 to 7, and Saturday, 11 to 5. And we're always open online, manofactionfigures.com. That's all I got for you guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.